All right, we are live. Jenny from the block here today with Matt Megel from CAZA Gainesville. How are you doing today, Matt?
What is up? I'm so excited to be on an episode of Jenny from the Block. This is awesome.
Awesome. Glad you're here. Today we are talking about your specialty, how to farm like a boss, obviously realtor style. So obviously let's jump right into it. Obviously agents, need systems, need something to kind of follow with a real estate business. This is something that you have really poured into the farm and in your farm in Gainesville. So let's kind of start with the basics. What does farming mean when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, it's a great question. To me, in a lot of the language that we use in the CAZA group, we talk about your sphere of influence or your database being kind of like farm one, your primary engine of driving, consistent and predictable income in your business. And a hyperlocal or a geographic farm, which is what I have kind of focused on, we kind of call as like farm two, simply another way, another tactic strategy to get into relationship with more people. Thereby a geographic farming strategy is really a way to get people into your farm one, into your sphere of influence. The unique thing about a geographic farming approach is that the houses don't move, right? It's kind of a static target. In my geographic farm, there are 1,235 homes. I have those addresses on a list. My goal is to be in relationship and make friends with as many of the people that live in those 1,235 homes as possible. So it allows, the farming strategy, geographic farming strategy, allows for kind of a simple approach to creating a larger sphere of influence, to being in relationship with more people. So that's kind of, my farming strategy is to add more people ultimately to my sphere of influence.
Yeah, and obviously you live in Gainesville, you live, breathe, love Gainesville, but how do you choose which neighborhoods to farm? Like what made you choose those specific, because obviously Gainesville is fairly large, so how do you pick those specific places?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that I think are important to consider when looking at kind of choosing a farm. For me, number one was kind of loving the community, like loving the neighborhood. So I farm where I live and the neighborhood adjacent to mine. I live in Meadows at Morris Farm. The neighborhood next door to mine is Glenkirk Estates. There are others that kind of surround it. But when I moved here in 2013, I didn't actually start farming until 2016, geographic farming until 2016. So it wasn't immediate, but I did fall in love with the neighborhood. I saw lots of other agent signs in my neighborhood. And I'm like, I love this place. I could serve here. I can give more, love more, do more, invest more. So number one was really loving the community, I think. Mm-hmm. Number two is probably turnover rate. This gets a little more tactical. But, if you live in a neighborhood that nobody tends to be buying or selling homes in because they're just, very low percentage of homes are being turned in a given year, that's difficult. It just reduces your at-bats, the chances of actually earning any business if there's nobody kind of selling. So on a percentage basis, I like to see no less than 5%. You can do it with less, but 5 to 8%, above 8%, you're going to have lots of at-bats in my opinion. But, 5% or better is really kind of a target in my opinion. And then the third thing in looking at farms would probably be, what is the current competition, environment look like? Is there one agent that is owning a massive share of the, of the homes that are selling in a given area? Or is it pretty flat and there's lots of agents that are doing lots of things, but not necessarily a dominant agent that's taking a big chunk of that market? If you have a place that you love, that's got good turnover and no real dominant agent, I think it can be an amazing opportunity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how do you kind of activate this farm? What are different things utilizing kind of marketing and events? What kind of tips and things can you share about, activating your farm?
So I did a lot of different training courses in the Keller Williams environment ecosystem that, we're here with the CAZA group. And a lot of those trainings, we're talking about physical mail. Hey, you just set your postcards up, you set it and forget it. And, you know, they got into some different things, maybe around events or whatever, but it didn't really feel like the disclaimers that they were constantly making, Jenny, was that, you know, hey, you got to be in this for the long haul. You got to have a big budget to kind of be able to manage the times that it's going to take to turn this system on. And
Right.
I needed a way to really minimize the time frame to get like up and running and to start having some traction in a given geographic area. So I employ a 5-pronged approach to activate my farm. The first step was actually door knocking. And that may sound crazy because who wants to go out there and knock on doors, you know,
Yeah.
a little fear maybe associated with that. However, if you were to go to all of your neighbors and you had 4 free movie tickets and $30 worth of free concessions at the local movie theater, and you simply went knocking on doors saying, hey, does your family like movies? Because I've got free tickets and free popcorn for you and your family. How many people are going to slam the door in your face and say, get away from me, you weirdo?
Right.
Not too many. What I've kind of manipulated in that scenario is just bringing value. So I came knocking on doors, trying to bring value, and in so doing, exchanging that value for email addresses, which will come into play kind of a little bit down this list of the other things that I do. So door knocking to get into relationship and to acquire hopefully an email address. Second thing I did was physical mail, a monthly newsletter every single month that was a high value newsletter to try and kind of serve the community with the information that they thought would be most valuable. Not really like just a postcard that talks about me, but something that hopefully the community would find that was bringing value to them. Number 3, email marketing. Getting those door knocks to get email addresses allowed me to do email marketing. The email marketing was also a very value heavy what's going on in the local real estate agent community, coupled with announcements for my events that were coming up, which was item number 4, community events. I do 4 big events a year. I do 2 to 3 smaller events a year, just to kind of, you know, keep giving to the community that frankly has ultimately given a ton to me as kind of the local real estate agent. And then lastly, social media, having an avenue by which I'm engaging that community through Facebook, Instagram, others, you know, Facebook is the primary one where I've been able to have the most success, but a social media approach as well to making friends with everybody in the community and adding value through that medium.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you know, obviously you've implemented this farming strategy in Gainesville, how long did it take you to see kind of a return or, you know, things to kind of switch where, you know, people were reaching out to you saying, hey, Matt, you know, I'd love for you to sell my home. How long did that kind of process take when you were doing these 5 steps?
It never goes as fast as you want. So, you know, the first year of doing it, I would say was 2016. However, in 2016, it took me until November to even get my physical mail monthly newsletter up and running in any sort of regularity. Like that year, I was figuring out where can I print these, what it's going to be in them, what should it look like, all that stuff. So I'm still counting that year as kind of the first year, but just know that that first year I didn't have these 5 things all implemented yet. Like that was the year of getting them up and running. But in the first year, I got 1 listing. In the second year, 2017, I was able, and that was kind of maybe the first year where I was running at about 70% of capacity of what I wanted to have these 5 steps of activation actually doing, like have them up and running somewhat systematized. And that year, I think I had 5 listings. There was certainly other buyer business that came out of relationships in the neighborhood. It's hard to kind of quantify that. I've always kind of kept track of my effectiveness or my results in the farm on listings exclusively, but certainly there was buyer business that was kind of, you know, being manufactured through relationships and stuff. And then year number 3, I think that would have been 2018. I think I did about 4 listings, felt not real great about that, kind of went backward a listing, so to speak. But then year 4, I think we did like 12 listings, 18 listings, and it's just kind of gone crazy from there. So there is still a time, even trying to be as aggressive as I am with a 5-pronged approach, to takes a while to get the stuff up and running, takes a while for it to start making impact in people and start getting some recognition or some not recognition, but like recognizability in the community. But yeah, those are kind of my statistics. And thankfully it's gone, gangbusters since then. But you do have to have a little patience and persistence for sure.
So with that patience, obviously you're really busy. You are, mentoring new agents now on your team. You are growing a team as well as you're a busy dad and husband and in the community. So how do you kind of keep that consistently going, with being patient that this is going to happen? What are kind of things that you've done just to keep that kind of mindset of this is going to work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think two things I maybe just have been fortunately blessed with as character traits that have maybe helped, or maybe I've developed them over time. I'm not totally sure, but I am pretty relentless when it comes to like seeing something through. Like I really want, I find it's a bit of a personal failure if I quit something, right? So like there is just kind of that dogmatic part of my personality, which helps. And then I'm a big, and that kind of manifests itself in consistency. But then also I'm a systems guy. Like I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again myself.
Right.
I like to do it until a point of understanding it really well, and then set up some sort of automation or some sort of assistant or something, leverage to allow that to be happening without my constant involvement in it. So everything that I've done in these, these 5 steps, including door knocking, by the way, I have, been able to refine, become more efficient at, and start to scale out. Like as an example, thankfully, my monthly newsletter used to take me probably like 6 hours on the first day of the month to do. Thankfully, having been able to produce some results, I have an amazing assistant, Elise Hill, who now, before the first day of the month, she puts the whole thing together. So on the first day of the month, I can just kind of look at it, fine tune a couple things, and it takes me like 30 minutes to an hour to just kind of get that out. So systems really help, and then being consistent. But there were lots of times, Jenny, where my wife, I would come back from door knocking in the morning, and when I would go door knocking, it was typically between like 9:30 a.m. and about 11:45, and then I was done for the day, and I would hit about 40 doors. I would come back, and I would have been able to speak to like 17 people, and talking to those 17 people, I would have gotten normally about 8 to 9 email addresses. And so I come back home being like, wow, I just got 8 or 9 people that are willing to let me send them an email a month about real estate. And that felt incredibly like successful, effective for me. I would come home and my wife would see me, sweating on my brow, walk in the door, knowing I was just door knocking and not knowing a ton of the context. And she would say, is this going to work? And I'm like, it can't not work. Like, in 2 hours or a little over 2 hours, I've got 8 or 9 people that are willing to let me, give them real estate valuable information. It kind of felt like it was going to work. So that, even though other people couldn't see it, that positive reinforcement and kind of the results I was getting was certainly helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously right now you are mentoring, new agents as well as bringing other people and showing them what you are doing. So what's kind of your advice? So, as somebody that's gone through this, that is, building a farm, that's always learning and growing and building the systems, so what advice do you have for agents that want to start implementing a farm strategy?
So I will go back a step and say, don't farm until you have your database, your farm one, really set up and working well. Meaning, if farm 2, i.e. the geographic farm, going after a neighborhood or whatever it might be, if that is purely a tactic to get people into relationship with you and become part of your database, your sphere of influence, your farm 1, right? If you don't have some sort of way to add value consistently to your sphere of influence, then what are you adding people to, right? So it's really, I would say to people who want to do this, good, do it. It's been an absolute life changer for me, but it worked because I had, communication, consistent messaging, value being distributed to my sphere of influence, and then adding people to it. Farm 2 became just a tactic to add more people to something that was already good or working or adding or valuable. So that would be step number 1. Because what I've seen is people who don't have that Farm 1 in place will get burned out. They'll do the steps that I'm talking about, but they don't have anywhere to incubate the relationships that they're starting with their, geographic farm, and that doesn't have the persistence or endurance, the longevity to actually see the results from it, right? So number 1 is start with your Farm 1 and really get that up and organized and communicating value to on a consistent basis, and know that you've got a great incubator for those relationships once you're able to add new relationships. And then 2 would be, give more, do more, serve more, invest more than anybody else that's going after your target market, and you can't lose.
Yeah.
The universe will not let you do all of the, positive things and not be equally rewarded. There will be certainly times where you felt like you've given and served and loved on your community, and the guy 2 doors down who just borrowed sugar last week puts a sign of another agent in his yard, and you're like, oh, the heck is this? Why is it,
Yeah.
But you can't outgive, the term I've always kind of used, you can't outgive God. God's watching everything, and he's going to be like, look, you can't keep sowing positive and not reaping positive. You can't outgive the universe, or whatever you want to say. If you take that approach to it as a genuinely trying to give, love, serve, invest more than anybody else, it will work. You just got to be persistent and consistent and all those kinds of things.
Awesome. Well, last question for you. So how do you build community specifically in Gainesville?
Yeah, so probably the best way that I've been able to do that is through events. There's lots of different ways. Social media can play a big role in that in terms of creating community. I am the admin of the Facebook page for my neighborhood. I don't know that I've created a ton of community in that, so but there's lots of different ways. But there's something really special about events, and the event schedule that I have is in January. In January, I do an event at a local brewery where I invite everybody who's given me their email address out to come to the brewery and have drinks on me, or whatever it might be. And so there's a time for 2, 3, 4 hours where I'm able to interact with all these people and see their kids grow up and things like that. In April, around tax time, I do a shred event at the local elementary school so that, people can kind of come and drop off of the documents that they want to get rid of as part of their, purging of their house, spring cleaning, so to speak. My third event is typically in July at the local movie theater, the Regal in Gainesville. I buy movie tickets, and I do have people come. Now, I say that movie ticket thing now. I want people to know that when I am door knocking, I'm not just giving away movie tickets. That's not the actual strategy. It was just an example. But the movie event in July, that is what I'm doing. People who signed up, they come on out. I've got free movie tickets. Go see any movie that you want to see. I've got a loan officer that partners with me, Chris Neofotis. Shout out to him at Atlantic Coast Mortgage. He ends up buying snacks for everybody, and he provides that, concession cards for people to kind of go get popcorn and sodas or whatever it might be. And so that's a great event. And then my last one, probably my favorite one, is in October, we do a free family photo session event. Nice. And that's where we have 24 slots on a Saturday from like 9 to 5 or whatever, 9 to 6, and 20 minutes each. You sign up, your family comes on out, and my wife, thankfully, she's an absolutely amazing photographer. She's got a degree in photography and graphic design from Murray State. And so she is my photographer that does it for free, thankfully. We take family photos, and then people are able to use those for their, Christmas cards and their, Thanksgiving cards or whatever it might be. So there's probably nothing that you combine all those things and, actually meeting people face to face and talking to them and seeing their families kind of grow up. That's probably the events has got to be the number one.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of great information about farming. I love doing these because even I learn a lot. So I really appreciate you jumping on here. And I did put your Instagram handle. So if anybody would love to reach out to you, Matt, and have any more questions about farming, If anybody is interested in learning more about real estate or real estate careers, definitely reach out to me. Again, I am Jenny from the block. Follow me on YouTube if you are not as well. And thank you again, Matt, for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jenny.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Have a good day.
Bye.